And welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the High Low Sports Podcast. We appreciate y'all for joining us here on this almost 4th of July Wednesday, or if you're checking us out later in the week, hopefully you are all celebrating responsibly and you go in with 10 fingers and you walk out with the same 10. It is DJ, joined as always by my co-host Kelcey as we get ready to celebrate the American holiday. And for our non-American listeners, I'm sorry, you probably just don't want to hear that whatsoever.
Happy belated Canada Day, I guess, for the non-U.S. listeners. No, unless you're Jason Pierre-Paul, I expect 10 fingers, 10 toes to come out of this one. Yeah, I'm not trying to mess with any fireworks anymore. By the way, I learned about a new fireworks type recently, and if anybody can explain what this is, a zipper. Somebody talked to me about it today, and they said it's banned in Ohio. I just learned that today. I have no idea what it is. I asked if it's a bottle rocket. Turns out it's not a bottle rocket. So I have no idea what it is. So if anybody can help me out with that, it would be probably the second most explosive thing to happen this week. Second. I'm just interested in trying to figure out what it is.
Hey, don't blame me there at all. But we got some explosive stuff to talk about here in the world of sports as well, too. We got NBA free agency. We got some disappointments on the pitch, and we got some explosive knockouts in the UFC, plus some NFL stuff that's been going on as well, too. We got a lot that we will talk into, but I think that's as good a time as any to take us into the first part of every show. That is the tip-off. The tip-off, of course, brought to you by our friends over at SeatGeek. Use code BellyUpSports for $20 off your first set of tickets to any of these wild sporting events or anything that requires tickets. Code BellyUpSports. Get yourself $20 off those first set of tickets. And for the first part of the show, we're going to head over to the Octagon. We're going to talk a little bit of fisticuffs for today. We're going to look at kind of what's going on in the UFC. 303 just wrapped up. I'm going to call it the cursed card right now. Was supposed to be the Conor McGregor card, turned into the not Conor McGregor card. Was supposed to have Jamal Hill, turned into not Jamal Hill. Rounded out kind of fun with Alex Pereira and Yuri Part 2. Then what was supposed to be Brian Ortega versus Diego Lopez, a very fun 145 fight. Well, that didn't quite work out either, unfortunately. And then Ian Gary and Michael Venom Page, two up-and-coming welterweights. Well, that disappointed too. So we're going to start from there and just work our way up. We're not going to go fight by fight, but Ian Gary, Michael Venom Page, I think it was number 7 versus number 11, something in that range. So basically, winner's kind of on that right track to the UFC title shot. Ian Gary undefeated, discount Conor McGregor type personality, unfortunately, but still a very good fighter. He just is terrible to listen to. Michael Venom Page, I think a lot of people have seen the highlights of him dancing, flailing, throwing a pokeball at a guy he just KO'd and everything in between. Unfortunately, probably one of the most boring fights we've seen from both of them. It was kind of just the Ian Gary leg kick, and then they exchange leg kicks, run away. Ian Gary holds on to him. Gets the win, but very boring fight. We're not going to spend too much time on that. Just a little disappointing with two fighters of their caliber that we didn't get to see at least a few International Fight Week fireworks. Especially it was in America. So you know what? I know they're both from overseas, but it's a good time to have some fireworks. But we're going to jump into the co-main event now.
One of those countries does enjoy some pyrotechnics is all I got to say.
That is true. You know what? They do have a little bit of fun over there. So you never know. Just saying, we're hoping for a little bit more from that one. Two very good fighters. I was hoping for a little bit more. It was very meh. Good win though. Good for Ian Gary. Whoever he probably a fight away from a title shot. Good on him. Still undefeated. I wish I was watching it right now. Then I'd be able to take the nap I've been looking for. But we're gonna look at the co-main event now, where it gets really wacky, which was supposed to be Brian Ortega and Diego Lopez. Kind of a similar situation. Winners on a fast track towards a title shot. However, when you have a super short notice fight of 15 days of those two, and Ortega, who has to cut an entire horse's weight to make the weight sometimes, struggles to get down to the weight, so they try and change the weight class. He's able to make that weight class, but still isn't feeling well. Turns out he is incredibly sick with a 106-degree fever, so he has to pull out on fight day to get replaced 3 hours out by Dan Ige, who, do we have like a cap or like a subtle golf clap or something? We'll give a tip of the hat to Dan Ige, stepping in on 4 hours notice, I believe, to take a fight. There it is. That kudos to him. Stepping in on 4 hours notice, weighing in, and then going straight to your locker basically to go fight. They basically agreed on that. Well, we fight at 145 normally. We both weigh 160 now, close enough. Just as long as neither one of us is incredibly fat or neither one of us is incredibly dehydrated, we'll just go do it. Then he walks out and fights a highly ranked fighter and goes to a decision, which very, very competitive fight too. Very competitive fight, very good fighter. Diego Lopez he's very, very good. And Dan Ige is a good fighter too, but you literally he was getting a massage and missed the initial call and then called them back and texted them back to me like, hey, I will do it right now. Send me the opportunity. I am around the corner. Walks right into the arena. Basically what we would do if we were going to see the event as fans, That's what he did. Just he actually participated, which is absolutely crazy. Like I'm pretty
I
sure
mean,
we've gone to the arenas for games we watched earlier than he did. Than he had the notice to go fight, which is absolutely
I
incredible.
as an early arena arrival person, I'm a big fan of getting there super early. That would drive me nuts if I was competing and I wasn't there early. Like even for showtimes for games that I played, like when I was competing and when I was playing as an athlete, I was the first one at the stadium for the most part, or at the arenas, ballpark, you name it. I was literally the first. Even adult softball, I'm still there an hour early, stretching because I got to at this point in time. I couldn't even imagine going from literally a massage bed to fighting within 48, 72 hours, I guess you can say. Like
4
that's
hours. He found out the
4
day
hours.
of the
My
fight.
bad.
Like he
4
walked from
hours.
the massage room to the arena and fought. He didn't even know
That's
he
even
was. That's like that is insane.
talk
He
about
knew
stay
he knew
ready.
he was
Like
fighting as long as we would have been getting to the stadium. That's how insane it was.
I need a DK Metcalf standing on business moment right here because that's standing on business.
Anyone, anywhere, anytime, and he held true to it. And he put up one heck of a fight too. You could make a case that he won against Diego Lopez, who is he's a dog. Like that, he's a future title contender caliber guy. Rumors are maybe him and Brian Ortega get booked. I can rebooked. I hope they do. Hopefully on not short notice too. Like as awesome as the fight as it was, that's a very short notice, especially if you get sick like that, you're kind of toast. Maybe put them both in the Sphere coming up in a couple of months. That could be pretty dope. Like that's an incredible fight. I hope we do get to see that again.
And put him in a bubble beforehand.
Just make sure he doesn't get sick and make sure he has adequate time to make that weight cut too.
No Chipotle before fight night.
No Chipotle, no nothing. Like not, and we can fix the weight cutting issue, but that's a job for another day. I've been asking for that for years. Like find a way to do hydration testing like ONE FC does. Like no more dramatic weight cutting. That's another issue. No one wants to hear that right now. And if they do, they've heard it ad nauseum and no one listens to me anyway.
Oh, that's another crunch time topic is what I'm hearing.
One day soon, we just get a little bit closer. I got to find a way to do it. You can't have people dehydrating themselves on fight day and then having their brain shatter when they get hit. So,
which, by the way, we have had an early conversation. You did have an early crunch time on that previously last year. So, in case anybody's wondering, go check one of our old episodes.
Over our 5 years, I'm sure I've had at least 2 or 3 because it gets more annoying every time. Although this one, 15 days notice, a little bit of a pass. This one's not really directly correlated to that. It's like I'm more or less respecting that wheelbarrow that managed to carry Danny Igue's balls to the arena for what he just pulled off, and Diego Lopez for taking that fight too. Like you went from preparing for a guy on short notice to changing weight classes to then preparing for another guy on the shortest notice possible. You basically walked into a bar and said, "I'm going to fight that guy." But the problem is the guy you're fighting is a UFC fighter, not just a bar guy. So that's as gangster as it gets. And we'll go, of course, into the main events though. One that kind of actually was the one that followed through, replacing the Conor McGregor Michael Chandler. Alex Pereira, Yuri Prochazka 2. The best stare down you could ask for as a fisticuffs fan. Anyone who hasn't seen it, go check it out. You can find their stare downs on anywhere where they're just staring at each other across the octagon. Neither one blinks for the entire introductions. It is uncomfortable. Alex Pereira looks like a stone cold killer. Yuri looks like a stone cold killer. It's absolutely it's got a very there's a lot of talk about aura on social. A lot of the Gen Z kids are talking about when someone has aura and whatnot. That's the epitome of aura, is watching those two stare each other down. But we get, once again, a short notice fight that unfortunately does not go the way of the person who lost last time. As Yuri, once again, very active early, has his moments, but Alex Pereira has what is literally classified as the touch of death at this point. When he touches people, they either go down, they get wobbly, or they start flying across the ring. And at the end of round 1, he touches them with his patented left hook. And then 7 seconds in round 2, he blasts him with, I think, the first high kick he has landed in his UFC career, and sends him to the ozone, basically. He continues what might be, I'm not going to say one of the most skyrocketed run to start a career, because there have been guys like Anderson Silva who got a title fight off his second fight, etc. But considering 2 years ago he wasn't even competing, he was, in his words, just hanging out in a bar. And now 2 years later, he has won the middleweight championship, the light heavyweight championship, and defended that belt a couple of times now, and has beaten, I think, 5 former champions in his 9 UFC fights. He's now 8-1 with 6 knockouts, has fought on the biggest stage and took this one on 15 days notice as well. He's on an incredible trajectory at this point. I'm not like, he started really late because world-renowned kickboxer for most of his life. He's 36, so he's probably not going to have a stockpiled deep resume. But boy, he might not have a lot of chips, but the chips he does have are pure solid gold. He has been on an absolute incredible tear. And on top, what's even crazier too is the fallout from this is he has now climbed to the number 2 pound for pound fighter in the rankings, which take with a pound of salt, very subjective. They did have him pass up John Jones, who technically hasn't fought, who's fought one time since I'd yeah, that's how long it's been. But then again, at the same time, I have a hard time with that one because you stick John Jones and Alex Pereira in a room, only one man is walking out, and it's probably not Alex more often than not. And you said about John Jones with 90% of the humans on the planet. So I maybe 100, honestly. Like he's a big boy too. So that even when you put big guys against him, he's bigger than most of them, and he's more athletic than most guys bigger than him. But either way, that was the kind of goof part. Those pound for pound rankings are always silly. I kind of hate them. But Alex Pereira deserves a tip of the cap. What an incredible run he's been on. And he does it when he seems so one-dimensional. It seems like just go shoot a takedown on him, but no one can. And if they it's like they're scared to get close because when he touches you, it hurts. Like his takedown defense is punch you. It's so ass backwards, but he's so damn good at it, and he's so good at moving, and it just works. So tip of the cap to Alex Pereira once again with his first high kick knockout in the UFC, I believe, too. And on short notice, defending his belt, coming off a broken finger in his hand, if I'm not mistaken, as well. He fought at 300, which was a couple months ago in, I think, April. So it's not like, and then he was doing a world tour 3 weeks ago, and now there's like, oh, yeah, sure, I'll come on down. And so just absolutely incredible performance by him. And he continues to just make history. At this point, his biggest rival, Israel Adesanya, as far as in the UFC goes, he's almost lapped him. Izzy always has more accomplishments, more wins, short time frame, more fights. But God, he 2-time champion, defended the 205 belt, beat one of the guys. It's kind of crazy how it went. It all started with Izzy's in an interview, basically joking around saying that Alex is in a bar saying, I beat that guy one time, because they used to go back and forth on socials. And Alex has said that's what got him into the UFC. That's what made him decide to train for it. And now he's unleashed a monster. So congratulations, Israel. You've unleashed a monster on us all. So congrats.
He did roll a Pokeball out, so something was bound to come out of that at one point in time. So
I think you're thinking of Michael Page, who rolled out the Pokeball.
No, I mean Israel has done a Pokeball before. It's just been usually off camera, or usually off the mat. Is more my point.
I got you. Well,
yeah, he has walked around. He walked around with a Pokeball before on an interview.
And he unleashed a full-grown Mega Charizard at this point. That's now wreaking havoc on everybody, and is very well in line to potentially fight for a heavyweight belt at this trajectory as well. It's already been rumored as a potential happening. He could be a 3-belt champion in 3 different weight classes. All he has to do is touch one person in the right spot. That's how absolutely ridiculous his power is. So UFC 303, what a absolutely wild, cursed card that ends with an explosive knockout. And it's very interesting considering they switched UFC gloves. I think at 300 is when they made the switch. Or maybe it was even after 300. They switched to a different type of glove, and the knockouts had taken a bit of a dip. Don't know if it was just a coincidence or because of the gloves. Well, we're back, guys. We got KOs again. We're back, and on top of that, and ironically enough, Alex does it with a head kick, so the gloves don't even really matter in that case. Even though they did.
So what I'm hearing is, for more knockouts.
And Alex, we trust, basically. And Alex, we trust. The knockouts are back, and we got some really good fights coming up. But what a weird and wacky card from top to bottom. And Alex continues to he makes no sense in the best, most complimentary way possible. Everything is wrong, but it's right at the same time.
I always love when athletes are like that, especially when it comes to the UFC, because you never know. Like, you see freak athletes and freak like talented guys, but then you're like, all right, well, what are you gonna do when you actually get in the ring? I think he's one of the few exceptions that like looks like a freak athlete, acts like a freak athlete, and then shows up and performs like a freak athlete in the ring. Like, it's just kind of insane how good he is.
What's amazing too is he started fighting at 185 and was massive at the weight class. Like, everyone looked at him and was like, how? It doesn't make sense. Like, it goes up to 205 where it was kind of his natural weight class. He still looks bigger than these dudes. It's so weird. Like, it's like, how do you keep getting bigger? I'm worried if you put him up to heavyweight, he'll somehow weigh like, he'll have to cut to 265 somehow, and his shoulders will be like out to here. It'll be like, how do you keep getting bigger? Doesn't make sense, especially with his almost Frankenstein fight stance where he literally just walks at you like this, completely unfazed by anything you do. Doesn't flinch, it's like a zombie, those level 45 zombies on Call of Duty, basically. He just keeps charging straight. He does it slowly, so it's like a slow death. He doesn't charge you till he has your timing down perfectly.
I just had a flashback to 6 a.m., been up all night on round 75 of Call of Duty Zombies and just dealing with those last bits of the horde, and you're the only one left just running in circles. Just hoping you don't die.
I do that without a pack a punch or a ray gun, and that's Alex Pereira, basically.
Yeah, jeez, no chance. No
It's
chance. By the way,
absolutely
what this 303 told me is that before the sphere, I do need to learn how to say standing on business with sign language, or we need to have DK on the show prior to it, because I feel like, or right after that to recap it, because I feel like that's the only way we're going to really encompass what's about to happen in the sphere.
I sure hope so. Like, there's rumors that it's supposed to be like every major sport event usually has like one truck, especially for the UFC. Like, they have one production truck, and they're going to have 4 of them because of all that's going to go into it. Like, because the immersive experience of the sphere is not necessarily conducive to a sporting event. It's more of a concert type thing. But they're going to, it's going to take a lot of manpower to make it done. But this is the type of sport to make it happen. You can't really do it with basketball or any of those other ones that require a field of play. This is an octagon that's probably going to be 10 feet in each direction, if I had to guess. Like, it's probably gonna be one. They might use the smaller octagon too, like they use at the Apex Center, as opposed to,
Ooh.
they might even use the bigger one. I don't know for sure.
So no running away is what I just heard.
Well, there's still some ways to do it, but the rumor is
more standing on business, less running away is the point.
If you're gonna evade, you better evade correctly. That's
Yeah.
all. I think there's rumors of it being Ilya Taporia versus Max Holloway too, which if that's the case, Lord have mercy, that is going to be an absolute experience. I look forward to seeing how they make that a reality, especially in a televised production thing too. Like, it's going to be a very interesting event. But go ahead and let us know down below in the comments what you thought of UFC 303, and if you think that the sphere is going to work, or if you think it's going to fall short. And once again, our good friend Nate from Corner Booth popping in, we always appreciate that.
Corner Booth and 17 other things.
I don't have my CVS receipt of the credentials.
Yeah, hang on. Let me unroll the Christmas list, the Santa Claus list. See if you're on the naughty or nice list this year.
Let me get this Elder Scroll out to go ahead and get through it.
Elder Scroll 7, Nate Productions.
8. Speaking of Nate, too, a big time Lakers fan, which I think is a good segment now, into our main event. And for the main event, we're gonna head over to the hardwood, and we're going to talk a little bit about the NBA. Free agency is underway. There's been some winners, some losers, some questions, some good, some bad, and some ugly. I'm going to go ahead and just go with the very, very first one, go right out of the top of the gate. Kelcey's least favorite team. We got the Lakers, and they have not done really anything. They did not. They brought in Bronny, and that's kind of the move so far. Obviously, as it is, they did re-sign LeBron as well to a 2-year max deal. Obviously, as it is every single year when it comes to the Lakers, the question is, they get linked to like 9 different guys this year. Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, if one of them gets traded. Dan Hurley is the coach. You got DeMar DeRozan. You got Klay Thompson. Because Jonas Valanciunas is just going Paul George even for a little bit. And you end up with Bronny, LeBron, and JJ Redick. So not really a whole kind of a we'll call it at this point too. Curious.
Yeah.
As the designated Lakers not fan here of the group.
Laker hater. Say it right.
Sorry, I stuttered a little bit, but you feeling good about this as a Kings fan, or what do you think? You like them just trying to kind of run it back with what they have, or how are we feeling?
I'll throw in one more move that makes me even happier. They got rid of Taurean Prince. He is no longer with Lakers now. So yeah, I am pretty excited about the future. I do have a little bit of inkling fear out there that somebody's going to be just let go by their current team in the Midwest and just a city with its own Chicagoland area. Spoiler alert in which player I'm talking about. He is rumored to not return to the Bulls, and DeMar DeRozan might end up a Laker. Obviously, that's his hometown. It's already been linked to it before he ended up on the Spurs. So, I'm concerned about that, but otherwise, I feel pretty good. And even with that said, worst case scenario, he does sign there. Well, guess what? You still don't have any 3-point shooters except for Austin Reeves. Are you really going to trust Austin Reeves to be the savior of that team? No.
Even his 3-point shooting is kind of shaky too.
Yeah. By the way, I do love this take because I stand by this. Darvin Ham got shafted by the whole LeBron move. Don't get me wrong. Was he a good coach for the Lakers? No, but I said that because he needed a better team to start with. You can't start with a team with the Lakers and Anthony Davis and LeBron and expect to win. But yeah, I think the Lakers are still coached by LeBron with a Bronny toe bag. And no offense to Bronny or LeBron. I think if Bronny had gone to a normal team away from his dad, we would see a much better Bronny. And then I will also say JJ Redick as a coach doesn't bother me, but a coach of the Lakers bothers me. And if anybody asks why, the big reason there is because I don't think JJ is really going to be the coach of that team. I don't think any coach that goes into LA that's not Greg Popovich, who I shafted last time I said this, Eric Spoelstra, or I mean, really, it's those two.
Yeah, like maybe
Who's that?
someone with a little bit, maybe Steve Kerr, someone with a little
Yeah,
streak.
Steve Kerr, Nick Nurse. I'd even say Nick Nurse could get the best out of him, just because of the way Nick Nurse coaches. But I think those are your kind of big four. And notice I leave a big name out there with Doc Rivers, who would not be a good coach for LeBron because he would just stroke the ego, and that's just not what LeBron doesn't need anybody to stroke his ego, which is what I fear will happen with JJ Redick. I think there's too much respect and reverence to how good LeBron is, and by all means, yes, he is one of the smartest NBA players to ever play the game, one of the smartest players currently in the game today. But the problem with smart players when they're not challenged is they take over a team, not for the best. When they're challenged, they take over the team for the best. LeBron was challenged in Miami with Spoelstra, with Dwayne Wade, with Chris Bosh, with Ray Allen, with Shane Battier. Shane Battier is the reason why LeBron was as good on defense as he was. Like, should have won Defensive Player of the Year, should have won countless awards. So I think LeBron, the re-signing of him here, it's going to harm the Lakers more than anything just because they didn't put enough around LeBron to make LeBron better, get the best out of LeBron. And I feel like they're just kind of catering to the king at this point in time. Self-proclaimed king. So, yeah, I love it as a Kings fan. As a Lakers fan, as anybody who's a Lakers fan, I feel bad for you. Unless you're one of the people that just craps on the Kings, then ha, he, get over it.
I will say I'm curious to see what they have in mind too, because I imagine about the hiring they had something in mind about what they're going to do with the team that they currently have. I could be wrong, but it does feel. I guess there's only so many moves you can make too. It's not like they have a lot they could trade away either way. So like I wasn't expecting them to do much, but you know what? Maybe they bring in a few vet minimum guys. We'll see. But you mentioned DeMar.
You know who's? Oh, say go ahead. You can go ahead, DeRozan. I'll bring this up later.
I was like, you mentioned DeMar DeRozan, who might be a hot topic out there, potential guy that could be on the move, especially with the Bulls bowling at this point. I think a fun team. You mentioned the Lakers, obviously, is linked to. I think a fun team is on the opposite coast for him. I think he'd be really fun in Miami. I think him and Bam Adebayo would have the mid-range completely locked down. Jimmy Butler could do his thing where he kind of just chills for most of the season and randomly explodes for a playoff run. This time he won't have to try and pick it up for the last month of the season when they're trying to fight for the 8th seed because he was hanging out all damn year and then get hurt like this last year. They could kind of spot break him in there a little bit. You got Vasquez, who came on really strong last year, Tyler Hero. Like, you got some interesting pieces around him. I think that allows him and Butler to kind of rotate between the 2 and the 3. Gives you a little bit of versatility there. If you want to go really small, you can put one of them at the 4. If you want to go like freakishly small, I think DeMar DeRozan can be really fun there. And they have so many shooters around that squad because they kind of did that to build around Jimmy and Bam, just loaded up with shooters. So I think that's also another option you have, is that opens up the mid range for DeMar a little bit. If they try and shuffle into the gaps, he kicks it. If they don't, takes his 2 steps and pulls up from the free throw line extended, or does backdoor cuts, everything DeMar DeRozan's still pretty good at. So I think that's a really underratedly good fit. But for DeMar DeRozan, how are you feeling about him? Where do you think is somewhere he could move if he does become available, which we expect he will be?
Yeah, I mean, if he doesn't return to the Bulls, there's a couple options I think are good. I think a young team like the Pacers would be underratedly good for him. And the reason why I say that is if you look at the Pacers, what do they have? They have a young, talented point guard. They have a returning. Oh, I can't think of his name right now because it's spelled weird.
Pascal Siakam.
Yeah, they have Siakam, and Siakam is what Giannis is, which is attack the basket. But you get DeMar in there, you get a mid range. I was thinking of Mathurin. Mathurin. Yeah, he's coming back off injury, so you add him in, who's shooting well above his career average, well above any expected shooting percentage there. And then you bring in DeMar. I think in that situation would be really helpful for that mid range. But I'm also going to say the team I just kind of mentioned is Milwaukee, and why not? Why not add somebody to fill in a role that you've seen Chris Middleton go out with 1,001 times in that second, third option who can attack the basket, and really I'm going to say third option, who can attack the basket but really is comfortable in that mid-range shot where you don't have Chris Middleton every game. You won't have DeMar every game either, but if you can alternate them equally, that could be an exceptional 3-piece that you don't have to worry about which one is going to show up because they're going to be alternated at that point in time. You're going to Kawhi and PG them basically and load manage that. And then you still have Dame. You still have Giannis. Like, why not, if you're Milwaukee, go and play that card? Obviously, Milwaukee has its own issues in their head coach, but I digress. I think one of those 2 options is where I think would be a really good place for him.
That would be a fun one. Those breaks with Giannis, Dame, DeRozan on the break would be fun too. I kind of wish Giannis would get that mid-range shot from DeRozan, even like 40, like even just a little bit of it. If he could add that to his game,
He's picked up talents from his other teammates over the years. Like that's the one thing about Giannis I think is still underrated in his game is he's still young, still growing. Still getting better, still improving his game, and he's picked up pieces and parts from some of his more experienced teammates. Like Drew Holiday taught him a lot. Chris Middleton has taught him a lot. Dame starting to teach him a little bit more of that kind of ability to shoot on the pull up, which maybe not the best for Giannis, but you get the point. There are small things. Brook Lopez's ability to play down low, Giannis has learned from his post moves. And if everybody's like, oh, Brook Lopez is a 3-1. No, Brook Lopez is the all-time leading scorer for the Nets, playing down low and giving you 20 and 10 every night. That Brook Lopez.
Top 3 from Stanford because of his ability on the block.
Yeah.
Like that.
He's the reason Stanford was in a tournament come March. Like that underrated player of all time and still one of the best players in Nets history. I digress. But yeah, Giannis I think would pick up some talents from DeRozan. So long term for Giannis, I think that would be beneficial. But I also think short term, having DeRozan on the team would be beneficial.
I could just get him to take one step in from that 3-point line, which one of his steps is at the free throw line. Pull up and flick it. That's all I need from Giannis because as soon as they back off, if you can hit that little flick recently, you're good. If they stay up on you, Giannis your way to the basket. But we talked a little bit of that. Now we talked about we kind of want to see now you're looking at some winners and losers, a few different players that have moved around. So we'll throw one out there. We'll decide if it's a winner or a loser. I'm going to go ahead and start with the first one I'm looking at too, and I think you're going to like this one. Chris Paul going to the San Antonio Spurs.
Yes.
I think of this one as a winner as well, too. They're not going to win a championship next year. CP3 is not going to get that elusive ring, most likely. But gosh, what he's going to do for the ball movement, getting Victor the ball. Last year, there were the amount of times when we look, and it's like there's a lot of young players that are moving around, so they're trying to like get their feel for the game, too. And none of them are true, quote-unquote, point god, as the sham god. Chris Paul, the epitome of a pass-first point guard. Especially now where he doesn't have the ability to pull up or drive by people the same. He's going to get Victor the ball. That pick and roll and pick and pop's going to be stupid. Victor gets a little position down low and just gets in the right spot. Chris is going to throw him the ball straight in the air. Victor's going to unleash his gargoyle arms straight into the air, turn around and flick it with Go-Go Gadget, Mr. Fantastic arms from the post. So I love this move for the long-term development of Wembanyama and the Spurs. Doesn't mean they're going to necessarily go on a run next year. Not trying to say they're going to be even in the playoffs, maybe competing for the play-in, or maybe just not one of the worst 3 teams in the league. I don't know. But I like what this could do for him specifically and the trajectory moving forward. I love this move.
And I kind of talked about how good players need a coach that's going to obviously challenge them. Chris Paul needs a coach that's going to challenge him, and I don't think there's a better coach to challenge somebody, especially a point guard, than Pop. I mean, the only one I could think of would be Steve Kerr. That's like in the league today, those are probably it for a point guard. And so you're going to take Chris Paul and put him with one of the best X's and O's coaches and one of the best player coaches to ever coach the game. I mean, we're talking the Phil Jackson level of coaching with Popovich. We're the upper echelon of upper echelons here. He is that good of a coach, and I will probably die on that hill forever. And I think Chris Paul is point guard. I mean, he is what you want from a point guard. Distribute to run the offense. He may not have the defensive ability he once had, but he may not have the offensive ability he once had. He still has the ability to organize, and especially with a young team like the Spurs, like you mentioned, with Wembanyama and all their other pieces. I can't think of number 10's name, but basically Dennis Rodman Jr. Is what he plays like. Get both of those guys involved in the offense, get them rolling, get them organized in the game, and having a second coach on the court has always been beneficial for a Popovich coach team. So that's what Chris Paul is going to bring. I think that's a great pick for a winner for sure. I do want to move though to a different West Coast team for one, and I'm going with the Clippers. And this one, I want to call them a winner because you offloaded Paul George, and people might be like, "What do you mean offloaded Paul George?" I don't think he's as good as people think he is currently. I think what they got rid of by him leaving, they have more than made up for by re-signing Harden, by bringing a guy like Mo Bamba, who I still think is an underrated power forward center type of option. You add in some of their other options. Chris Dunn is joining in. It's like bringing back Nick Batum, which okay, I'm a little torn on that one. But what they brought in between just those three players I named and re-signing James Harden is going to be equivalent production to what Paul George gave you the last 3 years for about a tenth of the price. Like, let's just consider that for the Clippers' sake. It's not too bad for them. I know they brought in a few other players, and honestly, all of them are escaping me right now because at this point in time, it's been 4 days, and I honestly lost track of everybody that's going to the Clippers. But yeah, no, I do think the Clippers are one of those teams that, for me, they're a winner because, well, the Lakers have gone one direction, which is we're not doing anything. The Clippers are like, all right, we're going to ship out a guy whose contract is killing us and try to figure out what we can do. Obviously, when I say ship out, I mean we're not going to re-sign him for what he wants to be paid. And that's huge for trying to get the future of a team that changed the logo, by the way, in the offseason. And who has a really interesting TV show out, by the way. But yeah, no, I think the Clippers are a very interesting piece. And the thing I was going to mention earlier, and this is Mo Bamba, why I brought this up, is I think Mo Bamba would have been great with the Lakers. That piece to the Lakers would have been huge for LeBron, for the success of the AD as well. So you really would push AD away from that being primary center role with Mo Bamba, who filled in well for Embiid at times last year for the Sixers. So for me, I look at the Clippers as I won't say it's a really big winner, but I think in this category of winners, it's a B+. Like, I think it's better than average. And again, I just don't think Paul George is as good as everybody wants to make him out to be currently. And long term, yes, he's been great. Just he's not that guy anymore. We're living in a past with Paul George, and that's got to stop.
I'm going to 180 you on that one because what I don't like about the Clipper thing is I think the problem is you re-signed Kawhi Leonard to a king's ransom last year. Now you're stuck with a guy who's missed 8 of the last 14 playoff games. And so I'm going to say they're losers going back to the summer of 2019 when you traded away $8,545,000,000 picks to get these two guys because they want to play together. And you've had your best playoff run when you went to the conference finals and was with Paul George leading the way when Kawhi was out. I do think last year was not Paul George's best year. He still gave you 47% from the field and 41% from three with 22 points per game. I think him, Westbrook, and Harden was not going to work. Like someone was going to unfortunately get shot in the leg. Sorry, Paul George. I know those probably sore spot there, but I think he unfortunately was the one that got the short end of the stick. And then Kawhi being up and down. They built the team around Kawhi, and he's never around. That's the problem, is that he misses too much.
That's fair.
So I'm saying that is that I think that's transitioned me to the next winner, which I think the Sixers are big winners out of this, getting that Paul George trade. We're not trade but signing him. Because you got Tyrese Maxey, who is a budgeting all-star at this point, especially what he just did in that playoff run. You got Joel Embiid, who when he's not flopping all over the court and hurting himself, he's a top 3 player in the game. When he's not injuring himself relentlessly. Top 5 even with him always hurting himself because he tries to play two guard at 7'2", 320 pounds. Just get on the block and dance and shoot your mid-range shot. I digress. Now you add in maybe not an elite wing like he used to be, but a top 10 wing player in the game probably at this point, who can still give you 22, 6, and 6 on a given night, who shoots 41% from 3, 48% from the field. He still has uncomfortably good handle for a guy that tall, and especially that lanky like he is too. Like he looks like a point guard sometimes out on the perimeter. It's weird. Like we know how good Kevin Durant is, but even he doesn't quite handle like that. It's very weird. I'm not saying Paul George is on that level, but now you're telling me he is. In your best case scenario, that's your third option because we're just like Tyrese Maxey takes that step and B doesn't shatter for once. That's and they did fill out pretty decently with role players around him too. So in the same hand where it might have benefited the Clippers getting rid of him, I think it helps with him going to the Sixers. I think he fits that spot a little bit better. I think let's say he's the number 2 option. He's going to complement an Embiid as the number 1 option better than a Kawhi who does the exact same thing as him, basically. And the difference is they have to basically rotate who's playing and who's not. So the question, of course, with Paul George at this point in his state and Joel flopping all over the damn court and Embiid, it makes me so mad. You're too damn big to hit the ground that often. They stay relatively healthy. They're healthy at the end of the season. Like they play throughout March and April. Miss January and February, I don't care. But if you're healthy getting into April, that's a dangerous team in the East. I think they compete with a lot of teams there. I think we talked about Mikal Bridges going to the Knicks last week. I think a healthy Paul George lets them more than compete with the Villanova Knicks. I think a healthy Paul George and them, they compete with the Celtics. I think that's a very close matchup. Same with the Bucks. I think you got to stay healthy though. That's the biggest thing. And they weren't going to get anybody better in Philadelphia at this point. Maybe DeMar DeRozan if he would have hit the market, but it's like that's even still up in the air. So I don't know. I like the fit, even if it's a bonus for the Clippers getting rid of him on one end. I think it's a huge bonus for the Sixers. Just the combination of fit and what I think we still have more. Paul George has more left than what we saw last year, even if he's not Indiana or Oklahoma City Paul George. Even if he's not 9 out of 10, I think there's still 7.5 out of 10 as opposed to 5 out of 10 that we saw.
That's fair. I actually agree that Paul George going to the Sixers is a good move. And while, yes, I just talked about the Clipper side of it, to your point, Paul George with the Sixers is not a second option, really. He's going to be a third option offensively.
2A, 2B, if anything.
Yeah.
Like right in the...
Tyrese Maxey re-signing is a huge deal for the Sixers. I cannot state how important he is to the future of this franchise. Tyrese Maxey is their young guard and that you need in this league today to be good. Yes, having Embiid is great. But just like Jokic in Denver, you need something else to go with a big center, and that is you need a guard. And yes, Embiid does play too, as you mentioned, but it doesn't matter. In the end of the day, you still need a guard to play. And Tyrese Maxey, offensively and defensively, has proven he can be that guy. I don't like they got rid of Shake Milton. I think that does hurt, but he also wasn't doing anything last year really for him, so it doesn't really hurt them. It would have hurt a normal team, but the Sixers, in their case, not so much. So, yeah, I do like the Sixers at what they did in this so far. Obviously, things can still happen for sure. But I do want to point one out that we haven't talked about yet, and I think this is the probably potentially biggest free agent was going to be on the market this year.
Saving one of the bigger name ones for we're saving one of the bigger name ones now.
Yeah, and so I'm just going to go ahead and rip the Band-Aid off because this was my big winner, and I didn't, we talked about this on the Corner Booth pregame show earlier, and I didn't want to say it there because this is like, for me, I don't have this team losing anything, which is huge, and instead they re-signed what would have been the biggest free agent option, and that's the Cavaliers and what they did keeping Donovan Mitchell. Everybody wrote him off. Everybody didn't think they were going to be able to re-sign him. I said this last year when going into the offseason. I think for the best thing to happen for the Cavs, he needs to stay. And it would have taken a big deal. And I'll be honest and say, I didn't think he was going to get away because it's $130 million, I believe? Was
39, I believe. So
139? And it could have got 165, I believe, was the max he was eligible for.
I think if he had went 4 years, he got out 165. So I think with 3 years, 139. If I'm not, then
it's one of those things. It was less than what he could have gotten as is because he couldn't get a super max with the Cavs. For anybody who doesn't know the rules, there he wasn't with the Cavs long enough to earn a super max, but he was eligible for a max, which a max level contract nowadays. I think it's 4 years, 165 was what you could get. So 3 year 139. Huge deal for the Cavs for their cap space as well, and I think that's an underrated part of this. Is their cap space now opens up that they can go and bring in and keep some of these shooters they brought in last year, and that's a huge piece of this for them. And they're not losing anybody, and that's even more important. I mean, this team is good when healthy. Last year they experienced 3-4 months of not having their star players. Like, you go, 2.5 months in total without Darius Garland, 2 months without Evan Mobley,
without Mitchell, 6 weeks without Allen. Like, they all four played healthy for
the play. Like, you missed the rest of the playoffs for Donovan Mitchell after the first game with the Knicks. Like,
he did cook the Celtics a little bit. It was irrelevant, unfortunately.
Oh, sorry, first game with the Celtics, and then he missed the rest of the playoffs. My bad.
He played,
which was only 3 more games.
He missed game 4 and 5, but he played game 6 for him.
Okay, thank you.
No,
but
he missed 2 and 3. He played the last game because he dropped 50, but it was irrelevant, unfortunately.
That's right. Yep, thank you. But yeah, it's similar to his Jazz career. Anyways, I digress. But yeah, no, Cavs to me were easily the biggest winners because they haven't lost anything. And I wanted to say that because that's really my biggest winner and the only winner I had left. I have some more like maybe middle ground guys, but I do have a loser that I want to throw out there later. But Cavaliers easily the biggest winner for me.
And they had a really good draft so far as well too. The question I'm wondering about is there was the rumors of if they sign Mitchell, Garland's going to want to be traded. So I'm curious how that's going to play out too, because Garland's awesome. I like him a lot. I think we both do. He's a very good player. But unfortunately with him and Donovan Mitchell, you got the Dame and CJ McCollum issue where they're two guards that are smaller that do a lot of the same things. They're both very offensive centric guards who can defend, but they're just smaller. So when you put them up against a 6'7" guard, or if they get switched onto a wing, they're in trouble. They both operate with the ball in their hands primarily. They're not spot up shooters. They just can shoot. So that's where it's going to be. Weirdly enough, it wouldn't make any. He's not going to be there, but Drew Holiday would be the perfect point guard in Cleveland if Darius Garland left. It's not going to happen, but
Yeah.
I think if they do trade Garland, it's going to be finding that right guard to complement Donovan Mitchell. And the smart part about his deal is there's supposed to be new TV money that kicks in about 2 to 3 years. So that's what puts him right in a good spot where he can cash in on that and still only be 28, 29 years old.
29.
So he could probably sign a big old deal from that. So I like that one as well. Keeping Donovan Mitchell, who we always like to joke about it too, because we were in Cleveland when he got traded there. He's your favorite player's favorite player. Even if people didn't necessarily know about him, especially in Utah, he's got game. And you saw he's the only quote unquote superstar player that truly cooked the Celtics. I mean, Luke and Kyrie did have their one game in game 4, I believe it was, where they extended the series, where they kind of went off. But Donovan Mitchell consistently throughout that series with the Celtics, he was getting his. They lost obviously in 5, so it doesn't matter. But he is that good. He is a fringe top 10 player, superstar level player. I think that's a very good move for him. Yeah. One other big free agent one that I thought we were going to, but we're going to go to it now. Klay Thompson going to the Mavericks. Pretty big deal, not a huge deal. I give it an 8 out of 10. I think it's a very good move, in part because I think we kind of talked about in the corner booth. I'm going to rehash it basically. In Golden State, it's a motion offense. Everyone's running. Him and Steph are constantly moving, constantly on the run. Klay's legs are all but toast right now from the ACLs and just getting older. That makes it harder for him to defend. I think with the Mavericks, if anyone watches the corner booth and you're hearing it again, I'm sorry. They're going to say put your butt over there, or put your butt in that corner, or put your butt right here. And Luka will sling you the ball when they triple team him. Or Kyrie will sling it to you when they triple team him, or it'll skip past you. You don't have to run. You just go find your spot and maybe come off a pick on occasion. But you're not running figure eights for 20 seconds in a row before you catch a shot clock 3. He's going to be able to spot and shoot and then play a little bit of defense. Him and PJ Washington, maybe one of them moves to the bench. Maybe he comes off. Either way, you have a lot of versatility for a team that's coming out the finals. To anyone who really actually, when you look at the series, the problem wasn't that they didn't defend. Because I know the talk of it, especially the start of the season, was they don't guard anybody. Since the trade deadline, their defense cranked it up a notch. And in the finals, they didn't lose because of defense. They lost because they couldn't put the ball in the hole. And they kept giving the Celtics extra opportunities. Like, you look at the scores in that, it's not like even when they got blown out, it's because they scored 70. It's not because they gave up 170. So
yeah,
I like this move a lot. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. I think this is one of the few places like where he could just be a catch and shoot guy. I think it works pretty well. And it's Luka's going to gets everybody open threes. Like, my God, it's the same thing. Like, just I don't know. It's the thing with Harrison Barnes and the Warriors. It's like you could put anybody in that spot and they hit a couple of threes and the Warriors will win 3 championships in a row. Instead, they put in Kevin Durant there and is overloaded. So this isn't quite the same spot. All you have to do is catch and hit those threes. And Klay's, I think he can still do that, especially because I think he'll have fresher legs, not running as much. So we're gonna give it an 8 out of 10.
I do like the Klay move. I'm looking more at some of their other moves, and the reason why I think a lot of their defense did improve last year was somebody like Derek Jones, who did leave though just now. He has been announced to the Clippers, which by the way was the other Clippers player I was trying to think of. I was like, there was somebody. It was Derek Jones Jr. So he helped obviously defensively, but like you said, there are a lot of talented players on this team, especially young players, to fill in that role of that kind of stretch switch defender. Which sounds weird to say that. It feels like I'm talking about like soccer or something instead of basketball, but a stretch switch defender. And if you don't know what that means, he means he's a long-bodied guy who can switch every position, 1 through 5, and guard them all. Probably not 5 that much, but nowadays most 5s are not Jokic or Embiid. So yeah, I like the move. Overall, I like what the Mavs have done. Obviously, bringing Klay Thompson in. I talked about this on the corner booth pregame, and that's, his shot is so clean, so smooth. He doesn't need a lot of legs to it. And that's the one thing of his game. And it's the one thing for every player. And Steve Kerr talked about this many a times. The last thing to leave for any basketball player, especially somebody who shot a lot, is their shot. Del Curry is famous for saying the same thing. He's like, my shot is the reason why I was a pro. Well, he was a pro for so long because he continued to have the shot even into his retirement days. It's just something that doesn't leave you unless you can't see anymore or you need a lot of legs in your shot. Like JJ Redick does need a lot of legs in his shot. That's why he started fading quickly. So yeah, I think this is a big move for Clay. I think this is huge for him. Getting a more settled offense, not running around all the time, is big. And I do want to point out Jared made a good point in his show about there's a couple other teams that could have used him that maybe he's a better overall fit, but I think for what the Mavs needed, as you said, they guarded really well, holding the Celtics to 110, 115 most nights. I think it capped at 117 was the best game they had. It's been a great game. They just couldn't score over 110 at all, and that's the rough part about it.
107, by the way. Like they didn't.
107. My bad.
Yeah, that's even more ridiculous how good their defense actually was.
A team that was averaging 108 in the regular season couldn't score 100, like over 100.
Exactly. And the reason you lost the game is because you scored 89, 98, 99, 88, and 84. Like those are some hard. You did have your 122 outburst to extend the series, but that's not.
Yeah, you had one game and you won the game. Like it's wild. So yeah, I agree. The Mavs are getting better. I think they improved what they needed to. I do think that they're going to miss Derrick Jones Jr., but I think what they brought in with Najee Marshall and Quentin Grimes will help to fill that role. But the team that I want to mention that Jared mentioned, and this is my loser for this entire thing, because like I said, I don't have any bigger winners. I do have the Celtics, but I'm not going to count them because Larry O'Brien gets you enough conversation for the year. I don't care anymore to talk about you. But I'm going to go to the Nuggets. I think they're the biggest loser for me. They have not done anything positive for that team. Lost Reggie Jackson, lost Michael Porter Jr. You also lost Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Like, you lose those three, you just lost your entire secondary unit that was carrying the team when Jamal Murray sucked, which happens more often than not nowadays. You have Jokic. Obviously, he's going to be Jokic. But what happens when Jokic is not Jokic on those nights? You lose series because Jamal Murray can't carry you, and now you have no Michael Porter Jr., you have no Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and you have no Reggie Jackson.
Michael Porter is actually still there. They did list him as untouchable in the trade, so Michael Porter is still hanging around right now.
Oh, okay, so he was rumored to have joined some other. I don't even remember.
Yeah, it looks like they changed their mind and they said like, nope, he's actually untouchable. So I think he was talked about, but then the Nuggets were like, no.
All right. They understood. They understood the ruling. Then they need to keep MPJ at the end of the day. That's it. So if they can keep MPJ, then I'm going to take away their loser grade. But I still think you lose Reggie Jackson, you lose KCP. That's too big of a loss to try to overcome initially. I mean, unless you bring somebody in.
There are rumors like a lot of them are saying if there's a good trade, you take it. But I'm like, what? Who better fits that offense? Like the dude shoots like 45% from three and is 6'10" and can guard. He needs to lock in a little bit more sometimes, but he's used to being the best player on the court. Now he's a 3-and-D guy. It's bound to happen. I mean, when you look at how good he was going into college, and he was supposed to be a top 5 pick coming out of college, he's
back injury, man.
Exactly, and he's still a very good player. Like it's I don't know who fits that role any better. Like maybe a prime Game 6 Klay Thompson, maybe, but like
Paul George.
Maybe, but like, yeah, actually, Paul George would fit that role, but that's not an option right now. So, like,
I was gonna say those are really a Kawhi hadn't re-signed. Those we're talking about a very small selection of players that can fit that role, and MPJ for how young he is the best option there if they can keep him.
I mean, the dude's 25. Like, there's not a whole good luck fit.
And mind you, this is me talking nice for the Nuggets. I don't normally talk nice about the Nuggets, so. If that tells you how good he actually is, I'm being very kind and saying you need to keep him for your own good.
I do say, like you say, KCP, that's a big loss too. I think they got to fill in that 2-guard kind of role too, like a 3-and-D guy that can occasionally, basically what KCP did. So I agree with you. That's gonna be a surprisingly big loss. And you alluded to it too. Celtics, obviously, a big winner. They spent all the money so much it's making me sick even thinking about it. Like $300 million to Tatum, $100 million to Derek White. Yeah, you know what? The fruits of your labor. When you win like that, you get to relish in it a bit.
Yeah, I mean, I look at this and this is this is listed as too much or just right for the Celtics. I think it's just right. For any other team, probably not so much. But who's going to replace Jason Tatum if you lose him? Like if you're not going to pay him that supermax, he's going somewhere else.
Who are you going to give it to then?
Yeah. Derek White, what do you do if you don't re-sign him? Derek White, what he's done this year, set that team apart to the point of being unguardable. We talked about the Cavs earlier, how we talked about their 2 guards. They're too small to be able to guard. The reason they're too small is because of a team like the Celtics, who has Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Derek White on the court, who
Andrew
all
Holiday.
three. Yeah, and Drew Holiday, who all four, you're talking 6'6" and above, and they're all long, strong defensive guards. And they can play offense.
You have Drew Holiday and Derek White, who are both second team all defense on the same backcourt. 6'4", 6'5" point guards that can just like, a 6'8" two guard, not a thing, not a problem. It's they made the right move. It's crazy because they have two of the three highest paid players of all time, I believe, with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, which is because they get those super maxes as guys that you drafted, so they get the biggest contract possible staying home, which is crazy to think about.
Which it's funny because now there's rumors that the owner of the Celtics is looking to sell them. It's like $1.8 billion is what they're at. Honestly, man, you should hold on to the team for another 5 years because guess what? You're probably going to recoup that times two very quickly. I don't know what the most valuable franchise in the NBA is, but they can't be far away from that total if not, the 3.2 that the Cowboys are worth.
And on top of that, you are in a good spot. You might even win it next year too. Like I'm just saying, there's a lot. You kept your whole team intact, basically.
Yeah,
it's
that team is too good. Like that is the definition of running it back. And like we're gonna do whatever we can to run it back, and that is a smart thing. It's what the Warriors did for so many years. Why they were good. Why we're now seeing the breakup of the Warriors is because they kept their core duo and trio, I guess you can say, for the Warriors. For the Celtics, you're keeping your core duo together for as long as you possibly can, and I think that's huge for the future of the Celtics. So for them, I don't think this is too much money, but I would say for the rest of the league, a lot of the places have spent probably too much money for my liking. I mean, some of them are already beyond their second apron, which is the double luxury tax. There's a hard cap beyond the second apron, and you can't sign anybody, which the Lakers are approaching that, if I'm not mistaken, if not crossing that second apron, which is a big risk for them going forward.
Absolutely as well. So go and let us know down below who you think were the biggest winners and losers of NBA free agency, sir. And that's now going to take us into Kelcey's favorite part of every show. That is Crunch Time, brought to you by our good friends over at Outlier. Use the link in the description. Get yourself a free 7-day trial to bet smarter, not harder. And Kelcey, you got a bone to pick with U.S. men's national team.
Oh, do I? Yeah, I am. If anybody hasn't watched the Copa Americas, well, let's just say it's not been pretty. Since Greg Berhalter took back over following the scandal in the World Cup 2 years ago, he has been 7 wins, 1 draw, and 6 losses. Of those 6 losses, 2 of them came in the Copa. One against a team ranked 45th in the world, and one against a team ranked 16th in the world in Uruguay. The U.S. ranked 11th in the world. Somebody explained to me how you're supposed to be a coach that wins games and gets your team to a World Cup, especially when we're hosting it in 2026. So we're automatically qualified. We have to have a good showing. By the way, there has not been a single host of the World Cup to have not made it out of their group stage. And the U.S. might be the first team, the rate we're going. It's been awful. I've talked about it so much since Greg Berhalter has taken over. And this goes back to his days as a club coach where he could not make changes during a game. By far one of the worst coaches that has ever been in existence in the U.S. Outfit, where you lack the ability to make decisions based on the flow of the game. His decisions are premeditated. They are decided prior to the game, probably 2-3 days beforehand, even to the point where if a player gets injured the day before the game or gets sick, he continues with the same strategy despite putting in a player of completely different talents. And that just can't happen. As a coach of an international level, you can't just play this by the book, by the safe paper. Whatever strategy you drop in your bedroom doesn't necessarily work. What ends up happening at the international level is you have great players, because the U.S. has by far the most talented crop they have ever had, and they have the most resources. But Greg Berhalter is not allowing his team to use those resources to succeed. They brought in their second set piece coach, and guess what? All the goals came off of a set piece. That tells you a lot about this U.S. men's national team. If you want to coach them, you have to coach them well. And managing a team is beyond just practice. It's not just coaching during the game. It is managing your players' mentalities, managing the flow of the game, making sure that you're not 2, 3, 4 steps behind, which Berhalter has proven time and time again he is. He makes decisions 10, 15 game minutes behind, which in reality, if anybody's watching any of these Copa games, is like 25 to 30 minutes of real time behind. And that can't happen. And on top of it, the one thing that will bother everybody if you've played an organized sport before in your life, prior to the initial goal by Uruguay, you saw Greg Berhalter on the sideline telling them that play it safe, it's 1-1 in the other game, meaning they would have advanced on a draw. You don't ever tell your team the score of another game during a set piece while the player is set up to the ball and about to take said free kick. You can't do that. You're distracting your players who are responsible for trying to mark these huge athletes. I mean, granted, soccer players aren't that tall, but they are athletes. And there's no mistaking that soccer players are one of the best athletes in the world. And you have to try to mark these in a tight space with a ball coming at you at 40 to 50 miles per hour if you're unlucky. And if you're lucky, maybe only 20 miles per hour. Good luck. And it's coming from a 45-degree angle on a curve with an arc, and you have to figure out a way where this ball is going to land and stop it. Well, the U.S. didn't do that. They were too distracted by their coach telling them it's 1-1, we need to play it safe, which is the entirety of Greg Berhalter's career, is playing it safe. You know, if anybody's watched any Euros and England, you know the same complaint is happening with England right now. The difference is England wins the games that they're supposed to. England wins the games against the 40th ranked team in the world. The U.S., thank God we beat the 86th ranked team in the world in Bolivia, because if not, we would have finished dead last in the group to a country who is 86, who has barely won a game this year. And yet, guess what? We barely scraped by. Yes, it was the best game that we've ever seen from Chris Pulisic, which was the best game we ever saw from this team in a tournament. But it was all premeditated. All the decisions that were made in that game were premeditated. Berhalter never made a single opportunity where that team made some sort of adaptation to the way the game was being played. He refused to do it in Game 2 versus Panama, and he refused to do it in Game 3 versus Uruguay, and guess what? Same thing happens. It's not good enough. It's far from being where the U.S. men's national team needs to be. This team has been ranked inside of the top 20 for 6 years since they fell out of the last World Cup, or the World Cup in 2018, and didn't make it. This team has been ranked in the top 20 following that World Cup. And yet, we're still losing games we have a 50-50 shot at. Greg Berhalter has only beaten Mexico out of teams they played in the top 15 in the world. That's embarrassing. Yes, Mexico's on a downturn. Sure. The fact that we're only beating Mexico, come on. We got to do better. The U.S. team is just... This is a situation where, after the scandal in 2022, the U.S. Soccer Federation, USSF, their organizers wanted to save face, so they rehired Berhalter. And I feel bad for every single player out there because they're being asked the same question right now. And if anybody watched the post-match interviews, they're being asked the same question. How do you feel about the future of this team? And one of the telling answers was from Anthony Robinson, nicknamed Jedi, plays over in England. He said very clearly, I love the group I play with. I love the how talented we are. Never once said anything positive about the coach. Never once said anything positive about the direction of the entire unit. Just about the players. Christian Pulisic, very similar sentiments. Evan Turner, who's being lambasted, and I don't know why, because he said the same thing. What do you expect these players to do when they have been proven? If you say something bad about Greg Berhalter, you get thrown off the team. You will not see another game in the red, white, and blue under Greg Berhalter. So they have to save face. They have to say the nice things. And so you're left with a squad who has to play according to the coach. If they don't play in the squad. And we're talking international players. Some of the best players the U.S. has ever shown wouldn't play because Greg Berhalter has too big of an ego to change his tactics. And DJ, you've heard me say this 1,001 times. The worst thing any coach at a professional level can do is not adapt his tactics to his players. The day you play all the same tactics that you only want to play is the day you sign your death check as a coach. Because you will inevitably fail, and you will fail big. One of the best coaches we've ever seen do it is John Harbaugh. What he's been able to do is an example of how you adapt your tactics to your talents. And yes, it's a different kind of football, but at the same day, it is still a professional sport with athletes. You have to manage the athletes just as much as you manage the X's and O's. And as great as Greg Berhalter is with X's and O's, he is terrible with man management and adapting to the needs. And so this is why the U.S. crashes out. This is why we see the end of potentially a golden generation for the U.S. Yes, there's a chance in 26 they show up. But what are you going to do? Are you going to get a new coach? We don't know yet. If it would have happened, it should have happened already, in my opinion. But looks like we're going to keep up with Greg Berhalter. So can the players play despite him? We'll have to wait and see because we still have 2 years. But I don't have high hopes, that's for sure.
Let's say you got 2026 around the corner plus 2028 for the Olympics. I know separate things altogether, but there's things you got to show up for. There is already talk like maybe they should get a new coach like Jurgen Klopp or someone like that as well. Just look elsewhere at this point. Like I feel like the sentiment is the same, that it's just not the right fit. You mentioned it's the most talented team we've seen for U.S. men's national soccer in a very long time. Like, we're maybe even like Landon Donovan level days, maybe even better than those teams, honestly.
Easily better than anything that Donovan, Beasley, because that team was great for 3 players, but beyond that, it's rough. I mean, they only had 2 players playing overseas. The best player in American history, in Landon Donovan, didn't play overseas, but for part-time. I mean, he crashed out of Bayern Munich in his days. We have Christian Pulisic signing a big deal for Chelsea and then going over and playing for AC Milan and playing fantastic. You have Weston McKennie, who came up with Hoffenheim as a top player, and yet people still overlook him. Now he's playing with Juventus. He played with Cristiano Ronaldo, and Cristiano Ronaldo called him the engine that keeps our team running. That's one of the best players in the world, and to ever play, said that our midfielder, an American midfielder, is the engine that keeps Juventus running and why they won.
That's a high praise. It doesn't get much better than that.
At what point do you have to look at that and be like, maybe the problem is the manager? And I never thought I'd say this, but I miss the days of Jurgen Klinsmann, and I never thought I'd say that.
It's a dark day for a U.S. men's soccer. But you know what? Maybe, because it looks like the sentiment isn't just held by you. It does feel like that it's starting to become a common trend now, getting him out of there. So maybe, just maybe, knock on wood, by the time 2026 rolls around, or once we get a little bit closer to that, we can have the change done by then. But
honestly, we need to do it sooner rather than later, though, because it's a whole new system you got to learn.
We're open within the next week in a perfect world.
Yeah. And by the way, you want to know the worst part about this? Is Marcelo Bielsa, who is the coach that was in the final running with replacing Berhalter after he got fired the first time. He's now the manager of Uruguay, who is the team that just beat us. Jesse Marsch, who was in the, I guess you can call it semis of that coaching race, an American coach who was coaching overseas successfully, was happy to take the job. The U.S. said, no, we don't like you. Now he's coaching Canada and got them to the group stages. So please tell me, and by the way, he did that in a group that Canada was not slated to get out of the group stage. So please tell me how Greg Berhalter is the best decision out of those 2. I mean, I'm not even going to count the other 7 that I can name that would have been better. But you know what? I'm just going to start with those 2. That's just enough questions that I need to have answered.
The answer is he was not, and they made a big boo-boo, and now we're paying for it. And our only hope is to somehow correct the mistakes sooner rather than later, because if this happens in 2026, there should be riots. Like, I know soccer's not as big in the U.S. as everywhere else, but there should be riots if this happens in 2026. That can't happen, not with the level of talent on the team. Like, it's not like at previous years in some of the more recent World Cups where it's like, they're good, but we'll see. It'd be cool to make it here. No, this time there's expectations. And
the expectations aren't difficult, though.
Yeah.
Like, they're win. At the end of the day, it's
win some.
Yeah, it's win it, get out of the group stage, advance, make a good showing. It doesn't have to be pretty. We don't have to see beautiful soccer. I don't care. Like, you can win 1-0. I'm fine with that. It could be a 5-4 game against Bolivia. I would have been okay with that if the team just wins. I'm not mad about the Bolivia win. I'm mad about the 2 losses. A Panama team we always beat in CONCACAF, and an Uruguay team who didn't care about that game. They didn't give
they were set.
Yeah, they were like they needed a draw or better to win and to advance as the number 1 seed. They were going to advance no matter what, but a draw gives them the 1. They were playing for a draw, and you gave them a goal.
Give them 9.
Granted, at the end of the day, like, you would have still had to win because the other matchup, because you lost to Panama. But I digress.
Another issue and stuff. Absolutely, just short of
Yay women's
absolutely.
national team, Olympics team.
Thank goodness. At least we have something to root for at this
Yeah.
point.
Too bad it's not Alex Morgan. She got left off the roster.
RIP. It was a good run. But I blame Andrew Fields. But
She was injured. She was coming back from injury.
that's fair too. But I'm still gonna blame him anyway for NBA 2K12 reasons exclusively. Never gonna.
That's fair.
Once again, let us know down below, everybody, what you think of the U.S. men's national team. Do you think they turn around in time for the World Cup in 2026, or do you think we are completely toast at this point? Let us know down below. We appreciate you all for joining us this week on the High Low Sports Podcast. We look forward to speaking with you all again next week.